The concept of the British credit system is actually very simple. Just think of it as a financial industry. The more you deposit, the more you can withdraw. If you deposit enough, you'll even earn interest. But if you usually don't deposit money and are always borrowing, then one day you'll have to pay interest. So we often joke with students and say that actually when you study Zi Wei Astrology deeply, the position you really look at isn't the life palace. In fact, when it comes to changing your fortune, I usually recommend the simplest, most direct and straightforward methods. All right, next, let's discuss something. We often hear people say, after you make a mistake or something happens to you, like for instance, getting caught having an affair, or after you've made some kind of mistake, and then, well, some people, after something happens to them. For some people, the news blows up and becomes a huge scandal, while for others, no matter how serious it is, they immediately disappear from the public eye. Aside from the person's background and all sorts of shady influences, what's the most important point here? Is your deserved value high enough? What is deserved value? It means whether you have cultivated it in your past life. Did you accumulate enough blessings for yourself in your previous life? Many people often wonder, what's the difference between having your fortune told and learning Zi Wei Astrology yourself? In reality, when you have someone else tell your fortune, your values, and theirs may not necessarily align. For example, they might believe that a woman should be devoted to only one man, and if she changes husbands, it means she's doomed. But you might not think that way. So if you learn fortune telling yourself, you can objectively figure out which path you need to choose and you can understand yourself better. For example, if you want to discuss issues related to your job or your business, the fortune teller may not necessarily understand your industry or your business. So how could they possibly give you truly accurate advice? That's why, if possible, you should definitely learn metaphysics yourself. It's just like how we should at least be able to read a basic health check report. Even if you're not a doctor, you'll have a better understanding of what is good for your body. Similarly, being able to interpret your own birth chart is like having your own health check report. Even if you don't become a professional fortune teller, you should at least be able to read your own chart. So, how about you? Do you want to understand your own destiny and want to know more about your life? Hurry up and sign up. In fact, a lot of people are interested in exploring these things. Some people may not get their fortune told, but they still go to temples to pray. Well, even if they don't get their fortune told, they still go to pray. Usually, the temple sisters will tell you, don't go around getting your fortune told. It could bring trouble. They say you'll suffer karmic retribution if you get your fortune told. Some teachers even teach fortune telling themselves, but still tell others that fortune telling will bring karmic consequences and that it will create negative karma. Some even claim that their own names are full of karmic obstacles. So, do these kinds of beliefs really exist? Of course, these ideas come from the Buddhist concept of cause and effect and reincarnation. But in reality, this is something that can be resolved. Why do you work so hard? But despite your efforts, you just can't seem to get results. Of course, in the study of fate and destiny, there are many situations like this. Many students ask me whether I believe in this or not. Of course I do. Zi Wei Astrology is rooted in Buddhist teachings. The entire system is essentially a discussion about cause and effect and reincarnation. Maybe in the future, we can dedicate an entire series to talk about this topic. Recently, I've also been considering whether I should share with everyone the rigorous history of fate studies or even Zi Wei Astrology itself. If you're interested, leave a comment below and I'll consider explaining to everyone what Zi Wei Astrology really is. Why is it now commonly referred to as Taoist when in fact it originated from Buddhism? And how did it gradually evolve into what it is today? In any case, Zi Wei Astrology actually contains a very profound concept of karmic merit, something very deep indeed. So from which palace in Zi Wei Astrology can we see the concept of karmic retribution? Among its 12 palaces, there is actually one palace that specifically addresses this matter. Which palace is it? The Palace of Fortune and Virtue. Those of you who have taken my classes will know that every time we cover this topic, whenever we get to the section about the Palace of Fortune and Virtue, our running joke is, no matter how good your family background is, how impressive your education is, or how good looking you are, though being good looking does have a big impact because after all, looks are justice. But even if you have good looks and great abilities, all sorts of advantages when it comes to wealth, career success, or success in life, none of that can compare to your Palace of Fortune and Virtue. In other words, it can't compare to having good luck. The concept of karma and reincarnation is widely popular in southern China, and that's mostly because it actually provides people with a good psychological outlet. Maybe I don't want to work hard, but I can blame all my unwillingness to work hard on things like, oh, I must have done bad things in my past life. Maybe it's actually because I haven't treated people well, so no one wants to be my friend, but I can also blame it on not having any benefactors or good luck. I can come up with all sorts of reasons to shift the blame. So on Duyan Pan, we teach everyone how to figure out what the real reasons behind these things happening are. But in reality, you also have to admit that sometimes certain situations really are due to issues with the Palace of Fortune and Virtue. In Zi Wei Astrology, the palace of fortune and virtue refers to the blessings and merits we've accumulated over many lifetimes. It's important to understand these blessings across lifetimes. That's why, among the 12 palaces, it treats the palace of fortune and virtue as it is one of the 12 palaces, and this matter of accumulated blessings from past lives actually has a significant impact on our overall situation. So, what is the palace of fortune and virtue? When you use the palace as your life palace, the palace of fortune and virtue becomes the spouse of the Guanlu palace. What does spouse mean? A spouse is someone who accompanies you. Our lifelong partner is called a spouse, right? So when you look at the palace structure, the companion is the palace of fortune and virtue. The Guanlu Palace represents the focus of your daily life and how you express yourself in life. Your entire life's display is in the Guanlu Palace. See, your life's expression is in the Guanlu Palace, and the companion of the Guanlu Palace is the Palace of Fortune and Virtue. You can see just how important the Palace of Fortune and Virtue is. The Wealth Palace and the Palace of Fortune and Virtue. What is the Wealth Palace? The Wealth Palace represents all the resources in your life. Without money, it's hard for your life to have the strength to keep going. And the Palace of Fortune and Virtue happens to be directly opposite the Wealth Palace. So, what does that mean? We've always told everyone that the opposing palaces in your life represent both your inner self and how you present yourself. The inner nature of the Wealth Palace and its outward expression are both reflected in the Palace of Fortune and Virtue. The source of your life's vitality also comes from the Palace of Fortune and Virtue. So you see, among the three most important palaces in a person's life, destiny, wealth, and perspective, the Palace of Fortune and Virtue plays a significant role. It also influences other aspects, of course. For example, the spouse palace and the career palace are also connected to the palace of fortune and virtue. In other words, the state of your relationships is also reflected in this area of the palace of fortune and virtue. Anyone who has attended our formal courses will understand this. In fact, Zi Wei Astrology involves the interaction of all 12 palaces. Therefore, you can see just how important the palace of fortune and virtue is in maintaining the balance of the entire chart. So, what makes up the palace of fortune and virtue? Behind it lies a profound theory of karma and reincarnation. The Palace of Fortune and Virtue represents the blessings and merits we accumulated in our past lives. The amount of merit you accumulated in your previous life determines how much you can use in this lifetime. For example, typically, if the Palace of Fortune and Virtue has Tianliang Hua Lu in a person's natal chart, this person usually donated a lot of money in their previous life. We often hear alumni say that people with Tianliang Hua Lu in their chart never lack money in this life. In the best circumstances, they can have more than enough to eat. In slightly less ideal situations, they will still have various opportunities to make money throughout their life. Even in the worst case scenario, it means that even when they fall on hard times, they might still have money that can save their life. For example, let's say a check is about to bounce next week, but right now they have no idea how to resolve it. Yet, just a day or two before the check is about to bounce, someone suddenly gives them a sum of money, just enough to cover that check. Or, if the company collapses and their child needs to pay tuition, and they have no way to come up with the money, it just so happens that they discover their husband's secret stash of cash, which is just enough to pay the tuition. What about natural windfalls? If your fortune palace is strong, you might receive an inheritance or property. At the very least, even in the worst case scenario, after you face difficulties, you'll still have something to save you. Where does this money come from? Actually, it's what you donated or gave away in your previous life. In this life, heaven lets you reclaim it. If you gave a lot before and haven't taken much in this life, you can think of it like saving money or buying insurance. In my previous life, I bought a very large insurance policy in my previous life. So what about this life? I get to take it all back at once. Or you could say in this life, well, the policy I bought in my previous life was the kind with regular fixed payments and dividends. So in this life, I can get money back anytime, anywhere, wherever I go. It's kind of like that concept. Just think about it. If I can be punished in this life for the bad things I did in a previous life, accumulating karma that carries over, then of course it's also possible that I did good deeds in my past life. I receive it back in this life. So I often tell my students that the concept of karma and retribution is actually very simple. Just think of it like the financial industry. However much you deposit, that's how much you can withdraw. If you deposit enough, you'll even earn interest. But if you usually don't save any money and are always borrowing instead, if you keep borrowing and borrowing, one day you'll have to pay interest. Everyone knows this. Those who manage karma and retribution, no matter what kind of deities, spirits, or whatever you want to call them, they are not part of the financial industry, nor are they regulated by the state. It's more like borrowing money from private individuals, and the way they come after you for repayment is really terrifying, right? So a lot of people talk about karma and retribution, but they don't explain it clearly. Actually, I often say you just need to discuss it as if it were the financial industry, and that's enough. How much do I save? How much do I get out? If I borrow money from someone, I have to pay them back. It's basically that kind of concept. And all of this is reflected in the Fortune and Virtue Palace. So we often joke with students that actually, when you study Zi Wei Astrology deeply, the position you're really looking at isn't the Life Palace. What you really look at is actually the Fortune and Virtue Palace. Why? Because when you encounter all kinds of disasters, whether you can get through them, whether you can resolve them, the final deciding factor is actually the fortune and virtue palace, not the life, wealth, or career palaces, even if your life, wealth, or career palaces are severely damaged. As long as your fortune and virtue palace is strong enough, you'll be able to get through it. So when we look at the blessings we've accumulated from our past lives, we use the fortune and virtue palace as the basis for discussion. Of course, when you check whether your karmic merit is sufficient, whether your blessings are enough, what you look at is still the fortune and virtue palace. Now, hearing this, some people might start to worry, oh no, teacher, what should I do if my fortune and virtue palace is empty or has issues? If I have murderous thoughts or if I have a lot of negative intentions, does that mean my fortune and virtue palace is terrible? Does it mean that in my previous life I wasn't a good person, that I went around killing, looting, and doing all sorts of bad things, and that I'm destined to have a miserable life this time? This kind of reasoning is also incorrect. Recently, we've received a lot of messages from netizens asking me about this because there are a few teachers who especially like to say things like, oh, your palace is damaged, or oh, this is affected by karmic obstacles, or oh, you've encountered negative influences. You've run into a female ghost again. Oh, this might be karma from a past life coming due this month. Maybe this is a creditor from a previous life. Honestly, it's really not that easy to have so many ghosts around. So don't buy into that kind of argument. Usually that's something people say when they haven't studied properly, and even teachers might say things like that. Everyone needs to understand one thing. After going through reincarnation in this life, we have a chance to reinterpret our lives and accumulate merit for ourselves. You can think of it like this. We have an opportunity to help ourselves. We're at least not wandering lonely spirits. Basically, for the vast majority of people, even if you have difficulties in life or experience some suffering, you're actually much better off than those wandering spirits because they don't even have a physical body. So a lot of teachers will use these supernatural or ghostly things to explain situations, but in reality, when it comes to judging the fortune palace, it's not as simple as saying that having an inauspicious star means it's bad. Admittedly, if your fortune palace contains stars like Hua Lu or Lu Kun, it indicates that you accumulated a significant amount of merit in your past life, and that will come to help you. But does having a fierce star in the fortune palace necessarily mean that? Actually, that's not the case either. Let's take a look. Of course, if it's Tianliang with Hua Lu, it usually means that this person helped a lot of people in their past life. Why is that? Tianliang is called the star of responding to karma. The fortune that comes from responding to karma is not originally yours. It's something extra. We've emphasized this to everyone many times. So, because in a previous life, due to religious teachings, you took care of others, and thus you gain extra blessings. So what does this mean? Of course, it indicates that this person did a lot of good deeds in their previous life, and as a result, they will receive blessings in this life. Generally speaking, Hua Lu represents the accumulation of blessings. Is Hua Quan really Hua Quan? Actually, not quite. What about Hua Ke? Hua Ke is also not necessarily Hua Ji, of course, but don't worry about this for now. We'll talk about it in a moment. In short, you should know that Hua Lu is naturally like this. As for the others, Wu Qiu and Hua Lu are, of course, directly related to donating money. Tian Liang is more religious and related to rescue or relief work. Wu Qiu is directly about signing contracts, and Tian Tong tends to lean more in that direction. You put in a lot of effort for others, taking care of people, educating them, and so on, or helping others. Ultimately, with Tai Yang, the sun, it means you have shouldered some social responsibilities, because the sun leads everything. As for Lianzheng, Lianzheng indicates that in your past life, you also helped a lot of people. Moreover, you maintained very good, positive, and harmonious relationships with many different people throughout your life. As for Tianji, it indicates that in your past life, you were usually a very intelligent, insightful, and perceptive individual. And you also used your professional skills, expertise, and knowledge to help and support many people in various ways. Jumen, on the other hand, usually means that in your previous life, the way you helped others was often characterized by you were willing to communicate with others and would share knowledge. As for Tan Lang is more about various kinds of lessons. It could be related to religion, or it could be about helping others solve problems and difficulties. Pojun, on the other hand, is more about you bringing many dreams to others in your past life, and you wanted to accomplish certain things. It depends on whether you succeeded or not. If you had malicious intent but didn't actually cause harm, it means you didn't complete it, and you might even owe others some debts. If there was no malicious intent, maybe you managed to accomplish some things, which also means that in this life you will be more devoted and giving to others. All right. Okay, as everyone can probably sense from listening, basically, as we just mentioned, merit is actually just like borrowing money from a bank. The amount I deposit is the amount I can withdraw, so I have to deposit it first. What I deposited in my past life, I can withdraw in this life. So how do you make these deposits? After all, it's not the financial industry, so it's not just about signing something. According to Buddhist teachings, it is divided into three types: material giving, dharma giving, and physical giving. Physical giving means helping others through your own actions. Material giving is about donating money or goods, and dharma giving is about imparting good knowledge to others. All of these actions can accumulate your merit and blessings. By using new methods, we can find out what you did in your past life and what kind of merit you accumulated. As for Huake, it leans more toward the idea that even if you didn't actually do that much, you still generated some influence. And then you get others to do these things. Of course, actually doing them yourself is always better. Usually, for example, if you have influence and use it to encourage others to do these things, that also accumulates merit. People like this usually find it relatively easy to solve problems when they encounter them. Now, what about those so-called inauspicious stars? And Kongjie? First of all, I want to clarify for everyone. Number one, Kongjie is not an inauspicious star. Auspicious. If you use Kongjie well, your life will be free of worries. When Kongjie appears in your chart, in fact, there are some advanced ways to use it that can actually help you avoid disasters. We talk about this in our own courses, and maybe when I have time, I can also share it here on the members channel. What does Huaji represent? Usually, Huaji indicates that in your previous life, well, of course, it can't be denied that maybe you did fewer good deeds or contributed less to others. But the main reason is that you simply didn't know what to do. You didn't know what to do, you couldn't find direction or a method, and you tended to hope others would help you more. That's when Huaji arises. As for Sha stars, the 4 Sha stars and Ling star usually indicate that in your previous life, when you were helping others, you were a bit more calculating. With Tuoluo, there was a bit more scheming involved. And as for Mars, it means being inconsistent. Sometimes you help, sometimes you don't. Qing Yang means you only do what you think is right, but sometimes what you believe is absolutely right may not actually be effective. Therefore, I don't think having Sha stars necessarily means you did a lot of bad things in your past life. Committing many evil deeds might be a different matter. You're just not as generous as those people who have a lot of Hua Lu, that's all. So what does that matter? We can make up for it in this lifetime. So after hearing all this, we understand that the Fortune Palace represents what we deserve, and it also represents our luck. If we want to change our luck, I usually suggest to everyone that the simplest, most straightforward, and most effective way is to enhance your Fortune Palace. So how do we enhance our Fortune Palace? Do we need to go to a temple to replenish our wealth treasury, or do we need to do this or that? Actually, you don't need to do any of that. According to my historical research on the destiny chart, especially since it originates from ancient Buddhism, what Buddhism talks about from beginning to end is self-cultivation, solving your own problems. So it will definitely teach you a set of methods to resolve your own issues. And this method is clearly defined in the destiny chart. So what is the best way to enhance your Fortune Palace? It's the Yuan Qian, which we just mentioned. You can help others, right? Of course you can. You can also share good knowledge. Can you practice Dharma giving? Of course, that's also possible. However, in my opinion, giving material wealth is the simplest. Why? Because if I want to personally help you, I still have to find someone who actually needs my help. But that's not always possible. I might want to share good knowledge with you, but you may not necessarily accept it. And what I say might not even be good knowledge, right? For example, those teachers who use so-called British karma to scare you every day, maybe even they think they're not passing on good knowledge. But in fact, by doing that, he might actually be harming you, so I can't really tell what's right in this situation. So the simplest and most effective way is actually to give material donations. Just donate the money directly and let people use it however they need. When I was a kid, I heard a story. There was a pig farmer who said to his pig, "Hey, shall we eat some meat today?" The pig said, "No." Then he said, "How about we eat some carrots today?" The pig also said no. In the end, after asking over and over, all the pigs in his family objected in various ways. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. So he took out 1,000 wen and said, "All right, how about this? Here's 1,000 wen. Take it and buy whatever you want to eat yourselves." That's why I often say, for us straight shooter guys, it's just like this. Choosing what to buy for your girlfriend is so hard, right? Just give her money directly. Isn't that easier? So since we can't really tell what's the right thing to do, just give money directly. Direct and simple. So if you don't know how to accumulate your own good karma, you can also just donate money. Will you only feel the effects in your next life? Actually, not necessarily, because with how quickly fortune cycles these days, often as soon as you start donating, you'll be able to feel it. All right, once you feel it's enough, you can accumulate it for your next life. So in my opinion, the simplest way to make a change is to just donate directly, to accumulate our merit in this lifetime. When it comes to donating money, there's a very important point. You have to feel a bit of pain when you give. That's why Christians tell us to donate 10%, because 10% hurts, and when it hurts to give, that's when the amount is meaningful. So where should you donate? Donate to people in need, not to temples, unless that temple is consistently doing good deeds. But the problem is, it's really hard to know if a temple is truly doing good. Sometimes they might even be better off than you. I've seen many temples that are actually extremely wealthy, and when they need to do something, they just ask their followers for more. So it's best to give money directly to those in need. As everyone knows, we often donate to hospitals. That's the most straightforward way. So donate money, accumulate your own merit, and let your blessings grow. You'll become more and more beautiful. The opposite of the god of wealth is the god of fortune. If you keep transferring your wealth to the god of fortune, won't your path become wider and wider? So invest your money in your own luck, good fortune in this life, and even better fortune in the next. Good people have good luck for many lifetimes. Thank you, everyone.